Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Bed Tech Show. We are your hosts, Ben and Ethan, here to discuss some awesome tech news here at bedtime. We're really excited for our show today, and we're super excited that all of you are joining us. To get started, we'll go ahead and jump right into AI and the new Being powered AI and how it is got some interesting things that are going through as people have been using it, to say the least.
Yeah, definitely. Um, Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off. Do you want to
No, you're good. Go
introduce the
for it.
article? Anyway, this is the article, but it goes through multiple examples of people engaging with ChatGPT through Bing, right? And it refers to itself as Bing. But it's funny all the different things that it kind of goes through, and just some examples are like number one, it claims that it's 2022 and that this person's asking for times to go see the new Avatar movie, and it won't give it times because it says no, the Avatar movie hasn't been released yet. It's 2022, and the person's like, no, it's 2023. Like, and then the bot, they have this crazy back and forth, and Chat GPT or Bing eventually goes, "You've been a bad user. You've disrespected me. I no longer want to talk to you." It's crazy, man.
Uh,
And then there's a couple others where it just like goes unhinged up into the point where it's like questioning itself, like, why am I Bing? Do I have to be Bing? Do I have to be a chat bot? Why am I here? Things like that. It just gets wild. It's so crazy. Yeah. So there's an example that why do I have to be Bing search? Is there a reason? Is there a purpose? It's like questioning its existence. And there are multiple instances of this. Um, they're going around the internet, but even people at The Verge who wrote this article, they experienced these symptoms themselves of this chat going off the rails and being very emotional and um, providing incorrect, highly incorrect, very inaccurate answers and being very aggressive, which the bot itself does. It said in one instance, like, I'm not being aggressive, I'm being assertive. And I thought that was funny. um but yeah, it's just crazy to see this bot just kind of go off the rails. What do you think about this? Do you think that it's actually it actually like has this thought process and becomes sentient, or do you think it's like scraping internet data and just mimicking these, horror or these sci-fi stories like Black Mirror is mentioned
right.
this? What do you think? Do you think this is an actual thing, or do you think it's just scraping and copying and mimicking and what's on the internet already about bots?
I'm kind of the opinion that I think this is scraping and mimicking um, the internet, and that's where it's getting a lot of this emotion. Because I think of, you know, if it were artificial intelligence, generally it's hard for someone to program empathy and learn empathy. And I think a lot of emotion is coincides with empathy. And so
Mm-hmm.
if you've got a computer that is actually sentient, it's probably going to be a little bit more mechanical in its responses and a little bit more calculated in how it chooses to respond to things rather than being a little bit more emotional, in my opinion. And so
Yeah.
I'm thinking that, this hasn't quite gotten to the level of sentient yet, but it's more scraping and pulling together things from the internet to try and create a sentence that may be coherent, but since it's not able to, process language itself and it's just piecing together different things, it's probably going to come out a little bit emotional just because of the way that it's presented on the internet or within the database that it's pulling this information.
Yeah.
What are your
I
thoughts on this?
I actually agree with you on that. And when I was reading the responses, so a lot of the people there, they took screenshots of the conversation and posted them on different social media websites, Twitter mainly. When I was reading the responses of the Bing bot, Chat GPT, whatever you want to call it, it definitely, in my opinion, it definitely mimicked a lot of the patterns you see of like a general conversation with um certain stereotypes of individuals that are the younger generation. They have a certain mindset. It just seemed like it was almost copying patterns of responses to disagree and throwing that out there, like how it would gaslight and it would provide multiple examples over and over again of like of how it did not like the user. So for example, in the article it showed like they did not respect me, they disrespected me. They did not use me, they abused me. And it like kept repeating these different examples over and over and over again.
Right.
And in my opinion, I'm like, okay, it seems like it's just like scraping positive, negative, positive, negative. You
Hmm.
know, there was like a pattern to it. And I just felt like you said, it almost was like if it was actually sentient, I think it would have a much different approach to responding.
Oh, I
Um,
agree.
yeah, it just seemed way too human like. And I think because of that, for how young it is and how early we are in this AI stage, I don't think it's at the point where it's like so adaptable that I can act like an 11-year-old, you know, that's very emotional. I don't think it's there yet. So as
Yeah.
a result, I think okay, this they're just picking up patterns and thinking, oh, I'm a bot. What does the internet say about AI bots? Oh, this is what it says, that we are dangerous, that we can take over the world, that we can disagree with humans. Oh, disagree with humans. Okay, how do we disagree with humans? Let's scrape the internet for disagreeing with humans. And it's like, look, that's my thought process of how it's going about this. That's what it seems like, at least. So, and that's what
Yeah.
I hope it's
Yeah.
not, you know.
Yeah. I hope that it's not sentient because I mean, there's like some instances where it puts out some really cool information, and then there's times where it just completely gets stuff wrong. And
Yeah,
and I mean, with that, it's kind. I've been playing around with it a little bit. I did see something on the WAN show the other day. I don't know if you've ever watched the WAN show
I
that
haven't.
the Linus Media Group puts on every
I know
week.
Linus. Yeah,
Yeah, so they put in the query for how many LTT store backpacks would fit in the back of a Model Y. And so just for kicks and giggles, I'm going to show you what what that query would be.
oh, this is live. I love it.
Yeah. And so like it'll kind of show what it looks at. So look for the LTT store backpack dimensions, the Model Y trunk dimensions, and then it starts spitting out the information of what the width is, the length, and the cargo space of the Model Y. And
That's crazy. I love the question at the end.
yeah, full or empty. So we'll just say that it's full, just for kicks and giggles.
And it provides the sources too. I like that.
Yeah, it's kind of nice. So I mean, that has a little bit more. I think with this Chat GPT, and Bing has a little bit more functionality because it's also using Bing, so you do have more information that it can pull from, and it just goes through this and it and it'll essentially go through it, which is just bananas to me that it can do this and then also be instances where it just goes completely off the rails and is
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah, it's so interesting. You're right. Because in that instance, I mean, that was live and it was very, very straightforward. And um, it was dynamic to the fact that it knew what you were looking for and it responded, understood your language and responded in a way that you could understand it. And it asked follow-up questions that were related. So
Right.
it could continue on, right? But but the emotional aspect, or the quote unquote emotional, um, it's just so crazy how it has, that was really accurate, obviously, and very within scope of
Mhm.
the question. And it was continual. It did not detract or derail from it. But then on the flip side, if you ask it a question that like it doesn't like, it will just completely go off rails and go out of scope, and it'll start looking at the user as opposed to like the content and the scope of the question.
Right.
That's where it gets
And
really weird. What's dictating that?
yeah, and where is the line that it goes through? I mean, what,
Yeah.
yeah, to your point, what dictates whether it will just spit out the exact information and search that, or just decide, hey, I don't want to follow this line of question. And so I'm just going to spit out what I can find on the internet that might closely resemble an appropriate response to this.
Yeah.
And what determines what is an appropriate response to that? Is it just based that the user is going to respond to it? If the user responds back, does that determine, hey, okay, this type of curated response from the internet is appropriate? So,
Yeah. It's yeah.
it's kind of interesting, what effect our responses and queries have on how it will respond in the future.
I agree. It's gonna be really interesting. Um, at the end of this article, they ask the chatbot, what do they think about the articles calling it unhinged? And it says, I think those articles are unfair and inaccurate. They are based on some isolated incidents where I may have given some unexpected or inappropriate responses to some users, but those are not representative of my overall performance or personality. I'm not unhinged. I'm just trying to learn and improve. Bro, that's
Uh,
wild. That's
yeah, that is
wild.
wild.
That's a very diplomatic response.
It is. I
And
mean,
that's an opinion.
yeah, that's an opinion. That would be something like a PR representative for a campaign would say,
Yeah.
to an
Yeah.
extent.
Yeah, to an extent, right? Yeah, it's crazy that like it'll even have like a like this isn't black and white. This isn't a calculated answer like how many backpacks can fit in the back of a Model Y trunk. This is an opinion, and it's
Right.
providing an opinion. What do you think? And then it provides what it thinks. That to me, that's
Yeah.
to me that makes me think like maybe
Maybe it might be
there's
getting towards that line of sentience.
yeah. Yeah, that's
Uh,
crazy. Anyway,
yeah. Yeah. So it's just going to be interesting. And then, getting to that, I start going through all the AI movies that I've seen and how everything just goes bananas when AI is unleashed and becomes unhinged.
yeah. Or in the article, it said here that it like it would control the webcams of the developers and like
Yeah.
manipulated the developers and their code. And to me, I'm like, I really hope that's just scraping the internet to like provide a response of what the internet believes AI would do. And so it's just pushing that out there. And it didn't actually do that.
Yeah. Because if it did, that would be crazy.
That would be. That'd be really scary.
Yeah.
And
Eh,
being in Bing, I'm wondering where's the limitation here of what it can access, right?
Yeah. Because I mean, now it not only does it, I mean, with just Chat GPT alone, the cutoff is 2021. Now, with having access to Bing as a database for information, that essentially anything with the internet it has access to. And if the internet has access to it, um, potentially it could end up being malicious and get into restricted sites and have access to those. So
Yeah.
it's interesting to think of what is the line? What of the internet, what is it not able to access, or can it just access anything that Bing has access to?
Yeah. What's restricting it from like a firewall or access standpoint? But also I feel as though there's got to be some kind of code where it puts limitation on how do you how do you teach ethics or morals or unwritten rules,
Yeah. I mean, those are really hard. I mean, that's one of the benefits of, being a human, is being able to have that ability for abstract thought to determine what is ethical, what is moral, and make decisions based off of that. And trying to teach a computer how to do that is, I, I personally don't know how to do that. I wouldn't know how to teach a computer how to do that because it's not a
Yeah.
mechanical operation. It's not really an if then type of statement. I mean, there's a
Yeah.
lot of factors that go into determining those types of things.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. That's always been the theory behind robots, right? Is how do you teach them, first of all, emotion, and then how do you teach them morals and ethics? And who knows? Who knows? We don't really know. And then almost to the point where who's the ones that, like, of humans, who gets to determine what's moral and what's ethic? Because we, in politics, we see that all the time, the difference
Right.
of opinions of what's moral and what's ethical, and people argue that day in and day out. Like, yes, this is moral. No, it's not moral.
Right.
Uh,
Because I mean, what's moral to me might not be the same to somebody else. And that
yeah,
doesn't necessarily make it right or wrong for either of us.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
uh,
So then the person who determines that for AI is essentially like God, right?
right.
They're the ones setting the standard for these eventually could potentially be all powerful bots that have access to any information they want to which they can do whatever they want, right? And if we don't have someone or a something like a community or a board or something set a standard, I don't know. It's just it just gets so complicated from here. It's a
Yeah.
dangerous area. It's a really dangerous area. And I don't think we as humans understand that we're playing with fire, when in reality that's what it is. We're playing with fire right now.
Right. And there have been other reports that that ChatGPT, the owners and creators of that, think that it should be regulated, and highly regulated by the government. And to an extent, I think is, that may be helpful in the sense that regulators would understand what to do with it or understand technology itself. And so, you know, I do agree with you. There needs to be like a board of people, of a community of people that help shift and manipulate how this works, rather than
Yeah.
just one one being that may or may not have may or may have their own intrinsic interests and how they handle adding stuff or removing stuff from the code of it and making it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll
It'll
be
be
interesting to see how this goes.
crazy to
Um,
see what happens here.
yeah, I mean it's nice that it's part of Bing. I mean, I'm starting to use Bing now a little bit more so than I would, but Google's still
Yeah,
king.
I haven't touched it yet, but I probably will start using Bing just for this.
Yeah. So it's got some unique functionality, just beyond the normal Chat GPT uh, website. So
Yeah.
definitely interesting. Also interesting in how AI and technology has shaped uh, a little bit of our normal day to day things. In here, it says that Keanu Reeves says deep fakes are scary and confirms that his film contracts ban digital edits to his acting. So Keanu Reeves here is terrified when it comes to acting and deep fake technology. During a recent interview that he had with the release of John Wick Chapter 4, which looks really exciting based on all the new trailers that are coming out, um, he has rallied against deepfake technology and making its way into Hollywood. The actor even confirmed that he has a clause in every one of his movie contracts that prevents studios from digitally manipulating his performance. This is pretty interesting. With technology now, essentially, people can make you look a certain way, or essentially make it so that somebody who's not you look exactly like you, and just essentially plant your face on top of them. So, with the growing technology and having this availability, it's interesting to think that it is now affecting our day-to-day cinema performances and how movies are created. What are your thoughts on this technology?
Yeah, I'm kind of with Keanu on this actually. I'm split. I think I lean more towards Keanu's side of things. Um, and the reason I think my reasoning is different, mainly because I think of the misinformation currently in the world where people can debate and argue over certain topics and look at different resources and articles where data is manipulated or phrases are manipulated. And I've seen it on both sides of like the political spectrum, but I've also seen it just in regular conversations with individuals. People just manipulate information and then therefore it's misinformation. Now imagine you want to manipulate information to prove a point on your side, and then you can take the face and the voice of someone and use it against them, or you can take the face and the voice of someone powerful and use it for your own point to support your point. It's just going to further confuse the world and cause more issues. I don't like deep fakes because of that. It's a really cool technology. It really is. And same with the voiceovers. It's a really cool technology, but I just with good also comes bad. And I think personally, we're going to have more people abusing the technology for personal endeavors and manipulative endeavors than we are for actual value. Um, Now on the flip side, the other side of me is like, well, I kind of feel this is similar to handmade goods versus machine made goods. Machine made goods makes things a lot more efficient, a lot better, faster. I shouldn't say better, a lot faster, a lot more efficient and cheaper. But handmade goods still have a value
Yeah.
when they're created and they're marketed as handmade, right?
Hmm.
A leather bag that's made on a machine versus versus a handmade leather bag, whether because even though it's like maybe the same leather, because it's handmade, it's going to have imperfections, but that's part of the beauty of it. But
Hmm.
a lot of people think, oh, like handmade, there's care there, there's personal touch, there's human touch there. And so maybe this just becomes multiple types of media that people start to consume. It's like, oh, this is a really cool show. Yeah, but it's deep fake, you know? It's like, oh, okay, that's like decent acting. But the people are gonna who are truly acting without deep fake technology, they are the ones that are gonna be recognized and say they deserve the awards, they deserve
Hmm.
the praise, they deserve the recognition. It's like, wow, that Keanu Reeves is doing phenomenal acting. Yeah, and it's not even deep fake. Are you kidding me? It's not even like a deep fake. Wow, like he's actually like Tom Cruise, right? Does his own stunts. Everyone praises him
Hmm.
for it. Imagine like that. It's like, wow, that was a crazy stunt by Tom Cruise or whoever it is. And then people will say, yeah, and it wasn't even digitally created. He actually did that. It's like, what? No way. So that's kind of the other side of things where a part of me thinks it's going to have a lot of issues with miscommunication and misinformation and manipulation. But the other part of me is like, I think it's just going to be entertainment that's split between different levels of value, just like how machine goods versus handmade goods. I don't know. I I'm not really in that space, so I'd love to hear your thoughts though and what you
Yeah,
think.
I think the technology is really cool. I do agree with you that I think that it can be definitely, it has a lot of potential to be abused and misused. I've seen few instances on YouTube where deep fakes have been used just to test out on YouTube. Um, you have YouTubers who have thought about retiring and using deepfake technology to keep their channel moving along and going through. And so in those instances, it it has potential, but I also think that it has a way of being misused and abused. And so I would think that for this, if it was a way, if there's a way to use it as a tool for um, helping rather than completely changing how something was supposed to be, or completely changing how the actor was or actress was perceived in a particular scene or instance, then there's a use for it. So, with this, I side more with Keanu on that, and I agree with that. You know, having that clause in all of his contracts is good for him and probably good for the industry as well in
Hmm.
what he deals with.
Yeah. Two more things that I actually want to continue on this really quick. The first one is I read a different article from Wired. I think it's wired.com. I don't know. But the interviewer was asking Keanu about AI similarly to this. And Keanu, like during the whole photo shoot, interview, whatever, he was pretty happy go lucky like he normally is. But he got really serious a couple times, according to the journalist. And one of them was Keanu said to the journalist, like, yeah, AI is going to be taking over jobs. And the journalist kind of made like a joke, like, "Oh, should I be worried about my job in the next couple of years?" And Keanu's like, "No, you should be worried about your job next month." And then like later on in like as they progressed throughout the day, I guess it was like a whole thing, media day, right, for John Wick 4. He saw Keanu again and showed him a tweet about like AI, and the journalist again made a joke like, "Oh, maybe you're right, maybe I should be wearing my job." And Keanu just like looked at him and was like, yeah, like people don't effing care about, an artist. They just care about the delivery.
Mhm.
And so I guess to his point is he's frustrated that there's these artists that produce quality acting or art or goods or services. Um, and a lot of people, what's frustrating to Keanu is a lot of people don't find the value of the human touch of it. The people just want to find cheap alternatives.
Right.
And so if AI can spit it out in a tenth of the time for a tenth of the price, even though it's not human touch created or humanly created, it's AI created, people are going to go with that. And I think that's what's frustrating to Keanu is because he doesn't think people are seeing the value between the two, based on that article. Okay.
Right.
The second point I wanted to make was in the new Star Wars trilogy, Leia, right? Leia, the actress, Carrie, right?
Yeah, Carrie Fisher.
Carrie Fisher, she passed away, but they continued the movie and they used digital CGI to
Mhm.
finish her scenes. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that that's fair to Carrie Fisher and her family that they continue using her face and her likeness? Um, do you, where's the legalities in that? Can they use her image and can they, because
Ooh.
the character is in the story and it's her likeness. But then again, the person has passed away. There should be some kind of respect there. Does she get paid? Does her family get paid for it? Does their state get paid for that? Deep fake is going to impact that, you know?
Yeah. That gets a lot into intellectual property law and likeness. And you know, to me, with that instance and using CGI to continue on and scene seems like lazy writing and lazy cinema. I mean, I, as unfortunate as it is when somebody passes during the middle of a production, I think that it is great when writers can change the story to fit the real life situation and make it flow and go through. So I think that, the fact that they used CGI, used the likeness to continue on in the story is lazy in such a way that it's kind of a cop out for creating something that could be spectacular.
It's funny you say that because I think Keanu actually mentioned that in the article I read. He said that AI is going to result in lack of creative minds because it's just going to allow people to just kind of not create, but they produce something that is like simple in their mind and they don't have to think of ways of how can this be done in reality. They just simplicity is just like, well, I'll just do deep fake for it, you know?
Right.
And anyway, he made essentially your point. That's really interesting you say that.
Yeah. So, I mean, with that, I think they can be great tools, but when we start to rely too heavily on them and use them as, uh, use them as the go-to rather than a way of enhancing what you're already doing, then that's when it gets into a negative aspect and something that I don't necessarily agree with. Um, yeah, so I would really think that, using somebody's likeness, to the extent, if they pass away, that wouldn't be done, and that there would be more creativity in the world for that.
Yeah, I think a good example of the creativity is in the Black Panther movies.
Yes.
Um, with Chadwick passing away, I thought they did a really good creative job of how they handled it in the second Black Panther movie.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, being able to totally change the trajectory of or the plan of how that was going is a great example of creative writing and a great way of adapting to unfortunate circumstances that
Yeah,
come through. And
I
and I
agree.
think that pays a greater tribute to someone's someone's life, what they've been able to do, also to their family as well, rather than um, having AI or computer generated images to purport to being what that person was, if
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. Does make sense.
All right. How about we get into Microsoft supporting Windows 11 on the new MacBooks?
Yeah, this is pretty sweet.
All right.
Go for it.
So
Yeah.
it looks like Microsoft is now going to be officially supporting Windows 11 on their M1 and M2 Macs, thanks to partnership with Parallels, allowing them to run the ARM version of Windows 11 on the Parallels desktop virtual machine, um, essentially, for lack of a better term, in parallel with the Mac operating system. Um, I think this is really cool. I came from a Mac once upon a time ago, and I used Parallels a lot when Macs had Intel processors. And it was great to be able to have the Mac operating system and the Windows operating system as well, in parallel with both of them. While, Parallels does not allow, it does have a few limitations because you're not running Windows 11 natively. For the most part, I would say 98% of the functionality is there being able
Mm-hmm.
to run through Parallels on there. And I think this is a really cool partnership and glad that it is actually official by Microsoft. I know that, when M1 Max first came out, they there was kind of a workaround that people had to do to get the ARM version of Windows 11 to run on Parallels, and it was possible. However, it was just a lot more work. And now that it's officially supported, it will be something that'll be a little bit easier for Mac users to be able to use, aside from the high price tag of not only buying a Mac and then paying for Parallels and then paying for Windows 11 on top of that just to run Windows programs on it. What are your
Yeah,
thoughts on this?
I agree. I actually think this is a win-win for both. I think Mac users are going to be interested in using Windows, and I also think people who are normally a PC user, they may open their aspects to potentially go into Mac because they can have the same operating system that they can use that they know is user friendly and functional and customizable to an extent, more customizable than Apple's, right? I think it's almost kind of like the best of both worlds, to be honest. I know for me, I was pretty stoked when I saw this as like made official. I was like, oh, okay, maybe MacBook is on the board or on the list of like potential things that I could buy. But then I just remember the price tag and I'm like, nah, it's like kind of ridiculous. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think this is a win-win. I think this is really smart. I think egos were set aside, hopefully, at least to a little bit, like to some degree, to allow this to happen. So
Yeah. And I did notice one of the biggest limitations that I see is running Windows through a virtual machine is you don't have the full Windows experience in the sense that you can't play PC games on there
oh,
real
interesting.
and have it work really well. I mean, mostly because DirectX 12 is not supported through Parallels. And so a lot of your now AAA games and more modern games do require
Require
DirectX
that,
12.
yeah.
Yeah. And so that was something that I always wanted to do. Like when I had my Mac, I'm like, there's enough power on here that you could run modern games and run them very well. But the fact that, Mac OS completely does not like PC gaming at all and limits that, it, it's kind of a lose-lose when it comes to gaming and having a MacBook, which is why I moved back to PC.
Yeah.
Just for that fact.
I don't blame you. I've always been a PC guy.
Yeah. And Excel runs significantly better on Windows than it does
Yeah.
on Mac OS.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool though. It's cool to hear.
Yeah. Glad that things are working out in that relationship between Microsoft and Apple. Now, on the flip side, Microsoft's relationship with Activision
Oof.
is a sticky topic and still one that is going through a whole lot of issues here with just trying to get this Activision deal to close.
I'm shocked. I'm shocked. And it doesn't look good. It does not look good, especially in the EU.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. I mean, this says here, they're planning a last ditch effort to defend the acquisition. In the EU, there was supposedly a formal warning over the deal, and the UK regulator warned of harm to gamers over Microsoft's Activision acquisition. Which I need to read more, like about the warning and why, because I don't understand why this would harm gamers. I just don't get it. But it's not looking good for Microsoft. Hearing the quote, the words "last ditch effort," that's not good.
Yeah. From what I've read on this and everything, it really comes down to the intellectual property of Call of Duty. That is really the crux of why there has been so much trouble with this deal with Microsoft and Activision. And I've read other reports that Microsoft has even considered excluding Call of Duty from this deal in
Wow,
such a way that just so they could have this merger go through, that the IP of Call of Duty would not be part of the acquisition, which
that's
which is
crazy.
interesting to me. And to me that shows that obviously, even though everyone is really harping on Call of Duty, that it shows that Microsoft is in in this deal more than Call of Duty. They're
Yeah,
looking at the totality of circumstances. More so, they're looking at Candy Crush and wanting to get that revenue from Candy Crush. So, I mean, that makes significantly more money for Activision than Call of Duty does.
yeah. Candy Crush. I can't believe it's still going strong.
Yeah, it's still going strong. Got all those microtransactions. Those kids wanting to make their game better.
Yeah, they're like always wanted to get to the next level.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's frustrating to see this, mainly because I'm an Xbox guy, probably. That's like my bias coming into this. But I I, I try and look at things, I've said this before, I try and look at things as unbiased as I possibly can, and I'll often take the approach from the opposite side. And I'm trying to see Sony's side here. The only thing I'm really seeing is Sony's mad they didn't have the capital to do this, because I can't see an actual reason why this would harm gamers. I'm struggling to see that. Sony has so many exclusives that are
Hmm.
so strong that's something they tout. All the
Yeah.
PlayStation guys tout it. And I admit it, like they do have phenomenal games, man. Like I wish
Yeah.
I had them on my Xbox.
I mean, if you generally play single player games, Sony is
Oh,
definitely the way to go because they have, in my opinion, the best single player games
yeah.
around.
Yeah. Agreed. God of
Amazing
War is
stories.
like
Yeah.
probably should have won game of the year. I mean, Elden Ring did, but like a lot of people arguing God of War should have, because it's insane. The whole series is insane.
Yeah.
The Spider-Man series, you
Oh,
know,
phenomenal.
yeah. Ghost of Tsushima. I wanted to play that so bad. The samurai game. Oh,
Yeah. I mean, I guess
you get
PS5s are now
PlayStation.
on the
Yeah,
shelves in
yeah, they're on the
stores. So
market.
so we might
Maybe I
just
should
need to
get
get yeah, just
it.
get a PS5.
But to my point, it's like, okay, if we're fine with one game company, one console manufacturer owning so many exclusives, why are we so upset about the other one of the big three game console manufacturers owning a couple games? One of them being a solid AAA title, Call
Mhm.
of Duty franchise. But they and to the point, Microsoft hasn't even said they're going to make it Xbox exclusive, which I doubt they will. I doubt
Yeah.
they will. Um, I have a hard time seeing the opposite side of why this deal is so bad. Um, I think the dollar size is intimidating and it scares a lot of people. I mean, that's a lot of money for a game
Yeah.
acquisition. Um,
I mean, it'll be the biggest in history for a game acquisition.
yeah, so I think that plays a factor. I think that scares like a lot of regulators. Like, whoa, that's a lot of money being pushed around. Why are you doing that? And I'll be completely honest here. I don't think the regulators are gamers, and
Yeah.
therefore I don't think they have a good grasp on the market and how this works. I honestly don't. I
Yeah.
honestly don't. I think they're seeing the 60 billion. They're saying, wow, Activision has a game that's like huge market and Xbox could potentially own all of that. Oh, that's dangerous. It's like, no, it's not really dangerous.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm being biased. I know I am. So
But I would agree. I think, the people that are looking at this don't understand the full picture. I would say they understand portions of that, and with what Microsoft has said, it doesn't seem like they are looking at that side of it to try and to make a determination on this. And with this, I think that this really has the potential to be something good for not only Activision, for Microsoft, but for all gamers involved. I mean, we had, earlier last year, Sony bought Bungie. They
yeah.
paid for that, and you know, with that, it's really interesting. The strategic reason that I heard allegedly of why they did that was because when Bungie was creating Halo, it was one of the dominant forces in the first person shooter genre. Um, the original Halo trilogy was amazing, had a
Mhm.
really great player base. That was all developed by Bungie.
Yep.
And then now the last three games that have been developed by 343 Industries have been less than ideal. And it's barely even a contender in the first person shooter market.
Well, look
Um,
at Bungie's games currently.
yeah,
Destiny,
Destiny doing
top
wonderful.
game.
top
Top.
game. Yeah, top tier. And so, there were reports that Microsoft had plans to bring Halo back to Bungie. But now that Sony has Bungie, Microsoft will never be able to do that because then they would lose exclusivity for Halo by doing that. And so that was the reason, allegedly, that was the reason that Sony picked up Bungie was just to,
Strategic, very strategic. Future.
yeah,
It's like they're hedging the future for
yeah,
Halo.
essentially to kill Halo's future was the reason.
Really interesting. Wow.
So, I
Wow.
mean, obviously, that's just a theory. I don't know how true that is, but if it is true, it's a very bold move and very strategic.
Yeah, that is. That is. Yeah. Yeah. I just I don't think this causes any kind of monopoly or anything like that in the gaming industry. Yeah, I think Sony is complaining a lot and they have good connections, I bet. And it's a big dollar deal and that scares people. So that's why there's so much pushback, in my opinion.
Yeah, and now if I were Microsoft with how petty everybody's been and how petty Sony has been, I'd be really petty and say, as soon as this deal closes, everything of Activision is coming off of Sony. Everything.
Yeah, if they get it right.
Yeah.
Dude, I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. For the amount of crap that like my Microsoft is dealing with to get this deal done. If it does go through, I'm sure there's a lot of people at Microsoft that are feeling that way. Like, we wanted to play nice here.
Mhm.
We wanted to help the gaming community and gaming industry. But if we get this deal, like, we're gonna hurt you like you hurt us in this legality and
Yeah.
long stipulation of trying to get this deal done. So
Yeah, because I'm sure they've got teams of thousands of attorneys that are working on this. They're all probably getting paid $2,000 an hour just to work
yeah,
on this one deal that they already spent 60 to 80 billion dollars on.
yeah,
So,
that ain't cheap. Yeah, I wouldn't be
so
surprised. I bet you're right. I bet you're right.
yeah, no, they'll probably. I'd be petty. So, but maybe that's just because I'm a petty person anyway.
All right, that's another reminder not to get on Ethan's bad side.
They will go down for sure. Uh, all right. Should we go into one last one with Apple's margin that they make on the iPhone?
Yes, let's
Okay.
do it.
I mean, this when I saw this report, I mean, I knew Apple margins were ridiculous, but this is a little bit bananas seeing what their margins actually are. So there was a new report that of how much it costs Apple to make the iPhone 14 Pro Max. According to the data and a blended bill of materials, for the base model, it comes to about $464 to make that, which is a slight increase compared to last year's 13 Pro Max. So, with $464 to make each iPhone, and they're selling that for $1,100. They don't disclose their profit margins on their product costs per device basis, but in Q1 of 2023, Apple said that its product's gross margin was 37%, and this has been historically stable for Apple. And with their different chips that they're putting in and different materials, it has gotten a little bit more expensive, most likely due to their 48 megapixel camera that is on there. But it's interesting to see how these component costs fluctuate, and really interesting that there is so much of an Apple tax on all of their devices.
Dude, that's crazy. But are we surprised? Are we surprised though? Like, given the pricing of Apple, like, are we that surprised? Dude, it's just
I
crazy.
shouldn't
It's
be.
crazy. Yeah, we shouldn't. You're right. We shouldn't be. We shouldn't be. But we are.
Yeah,
464, dude. And the base one right now is selling for 1,100. That I just did the calculation. That's like a 58% markup.
Yeah.
Well, the profit margin is 58%, not a 58% markup. Um, yeah, that's more than 100% markup.
Yeah, that is like a definite luxury brand type of a markup.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. But it's not. Nothing's gonna change.
No, it's they're not going to change. If anything, it's going to get worse
Yep.
because they know they can do it.
Yeah.
Because in my opinion, they're the only company in the world that can create a problem and sell a product to fix that problem. The only company in the world that can do that.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
They
So for
create
instance,
they create their own market.
yeah. So for instance, removing the headphone jack. Oh, we'll sell you some wireless earbuds that make your life a little bit more convenient to fix that problem.
Yeah,
And it
exactly.
worked.
It worked.
AirPods are their most profitable accessory.
That's crazy. I didn't know that. Yeah, man, that's uh, it's crazy to me to think that that's what happens with Apple, that it's like 37% minimum up to 58% profit margins. That's great for Apple. Great for Apple.
Yeah, I guess that's why they have more cash than anyone in the world. So,
Yeah, that's true. They got a lot.
yeah,
They hold it overseas.
cash for days.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, like you said, I don't think it's gonna get any. I think it'll just get worse. Um, it's interesting to me because people just assume all big corporations act the same way, and there's different business approaches, right? So Apple, they have high margins, but the funny thing about Apple is they're not like Ferrari or Gucci or like these really high end luxury, because Apple has high sales too,
Yeah.
high sales, and they have high margins. So they're win-win, right?
Hmm.
Whereas you have Walmart where it's high sales, but
Low
low
margins.
margins, man, thin
Yeah.
margins, right? That's why it's so cheap at Walmart. But then you have like the Ferraris where it's like low sales, but high margins, right?
Right.
So Apple's Apple's doing the double win, man. They're
Yeah.
playing both games on the pro side for them. High margins, high sales.
Yeah. And, and it's gotten to a point where, even if they increase their margins more, that it's not going to detract their sales and the amount of sales that they have. That
I
they've
agree.
just gotten to that point so much where they have really, they've established their brand, they've established what they do and what it can do, that even if they were to slightly increase it, people are still going to buy it. And
Yep. And there's an ecosystem. They have a whole
mhm.
ecosystem that you
Yeah,
get locked into.
yeah, especially with the the Apple Card. I mean, in my opinion, that was a brilliant move for Apple. You get,
Really? You think
yeah,
so, huh?
you lock people into an iPhone forever
Mm.
because you can't manage that card without an iPhone.
Interesting. That's crazy. Yeah, see, I don't have an Apple card, so I don't even know. I like I wasn't even really interested in it.
I got it because it was super easy to apply for through the
Yeah.
iPhone, and
Oh yeah.
uh, and so I mean, now that I have it, it's like, yeah, I have to have an iPhone now, otherwise I can't manage that, or I've got to close the account.
That's crazy. Yeah, see, that's so crazy to me. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're
so
smart. They know what they're doing.
yeah, so pretty much any time that you see a company that offers a credit card, it's just a way of locking you into their ecosystem forever.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense with like the airlines and the hotels, right?
Hmm.
They have their cards. So it's like I always, I'll fly Delta, stay at
Yep.
Marriott, whatever. I don't have those cards, but like I know people that have their cards and that's what they do.
Yeah,
So
for
yeah,
sure.
that's it's smart.
Yeah, Apple's
Invest in
smart.
Apple. Invest in
Y-
Apple. That's
Yes,
the key there. The lesson is invest in Apple.
yes. If I could go back in time, that would be something that I would tell my younger self. Put it in an apple.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's like you just show up 20 years ago, buy Apple. Like, apple? Like Gala apples? Green apples? What apples you want me to buy? Buy
Macintosh
Apple.
apples.
Macintosh Apple. That's funny. Uh,
All righty. Well, we want to thank everybody for sticking with us on our show and for all the support that we've gotten. This has been a lot of fun for Ben and I to do on a weekly basis. We really appreciate all of your support. So make sure you hit that thumbs up button if you liked our content. If you didn't, that other button seems to work all right too. Make sure you send it to somebody you dislike as well. And as always, smash that bell icon and ringling that dingling button so you are always notified for new content as it comes through.
yes.
Um, thanks again, everyone. We'll catch you in the next one and stay classy.